Mr. Calabrese will have a minute 40.
Hey, there you go. Wow, that's great. All right, I'll try not to use it all. Yeah, I agree with.
Yield back the remainder of your time.
I don't know if I'll do that. But, agree with a large amount of what Rob said. I mean, first of all, there's a lot more agreement than disagreement about the basic principles around net neutrality. That is that basically that no content or application or service available over the internet should be blocked in any way. It should all be available to any customer over any ISP. There is disagreement about the impact of net neutrality rules on investment, and another big area of disagreement is what we're just focusing on is whether it's better to have some, in a sense, preemptive rules, something a little more specific than the principles, the broad principles the Commission has today, which are not rules, or to do it all, kind of ex post on a case-by-case basis, as they did with Comcast when it was blocking or when it was slowing down BitTorrent, the peer-to-peer file sharing service, and the FCC under Kevin Martin slapped that back. Overall, I think it's important to be in between, I guess, is to have rules, actual rules that go beyond today's principles, but that are not, a laundry list of specific, business models or things that you can do. In other words, to allow a lot of leeway for case-by-case revisiting. And the reason we need some rules are twofold compared to the current system. One is, I think that providers just need greater certainty. Right now, there's a lot of uncertainty about what is permissible or not, and we need to clear up a few of these issues around things like managed services. So, for example, what Rob mentioned about UVerse TV service, or a cable company that provides voice over IP service. The rules that have been proposed allow for a category of called managed or specialized services that could travel over the same pipe and be prioritized. But we need to know kind of where is the dividing line between that and the open internet. The second big reason to do this is right now especially, is because, as Commissioner McDowell said, we're just about to launch an era of mobile high-speed broadband, with fourth-generation mobile offerings coming online beginning next year from Verizon and others. And this is the time, I think, to establish a level playing field among all the broadband providers, regardless of whether it's traveling over a wire or not, because we're also going to soon get to a world where there's a lot of blurring and convergence between those delivery platforms, and we need to have the same rules. We don't have them today.
Thank you. Audience members, questions about net neutrality? Anyone? All right, well, I'll keep going. If you do, just raise your hand. We hear that Google is a big player in net neutrality. How is this issue relevant to Google? And I guess I'd expand on that further, have the current rules hurt the development of Google from two college graduates in a garage to a multi-billion-dollar operation? Let's start with you, Dr. Calabrese, and if we would, try to get close to that minute.
Yeah, okay. So, yes, so Google is kind of up front, among many of the internet and content companies as a proponent of strong net neutrality rules. And, as far as I understand it, it's because, they grew up, they've prospered under a regime of effective net neutrality. As I said before, we currently are living, with, at least in the wired side, your wired broadband connections, right? You can attach, when you buy a subscription from your wired ISP, you can attach, any computer you want to it, right? And you can access any content, any service, any application. And as Rob said, the very few times that there's been any breach of these principles, the Commission has slapped it back. But right now, there's been a lot of as some other advanced services are coming along, a lot of talk about, exceptions to this general end-to-end principle. And then, as I said, wireless doesn't live yet quite under the same rules. And so I think it's the companies like Google that want to reach the customer unimpeded without paying a toll charge are big advocates. But they also say, and we certainly believe, that you also have to think about the kids in the college dorm, like Sergey Brin and Larry Page were 10 years ago, or the founder of Facebook was just 3 or 4 years ago at Harvard. You got to think about those guys in the dorm, in the garage, or like I said, your kids creating videos and music at home, and are they going to be able to reach the world, if there's any kind of toll charges or prioritization that degrades other content?
I mean, I won't presume to speak for why Google isn't taking the position they take, but I think partly, if I were a big company, the concern would be, as Michael said, maybe somehow I might have to pay or might be blocked. But I think the important thing on the surcharge issue is, first of all, the two things on surcharges, and it's not really a surcharge. It's not as if the ISP. No one has proposed, at least that I'm ever aware, that the ISP would set up a toll rate and said, if you want to use our network, you have to pay a toll. Rather, it would be, if you want better service, you can buy it. That's very different. So under no circumstances have I ever heard somebody would say, you know what, we're going to force Google to pay a toll for me to access the Google website. That I have never heard of. I can't imagine that happening. If it were to happen, it should be blocked and stopped. Rather, the case, though, is would there be companies out there that might say, you know what, our service, for example, an internet telephone service, if you try to make an internet telephone call today on a regular over-the-air internet, a regular best efforts internet, it may not work all that well, particularly if your kid is downloading a P2P movie, illegally probably, by the way. So there you're like, well, if you can sort of manage that, in other words, make the bits spaced out a little bit more, put them into the front of the line, you don't make the movie download any slower. Like we just wrote a report on this. You just make the entire thing work better. So you're not really degrading anybody. You're sort of moving somebody up a little bit. So I think the key thing there is, and the last point I'll make on that is a lot of this payment issue was more relevant when the internet was about 256 kilobits a second. Now that the average speeds are up to 3 to 4 to 5 megs, and they're going up every single year, you really don't need to prioritize as many applications. You only really need to prioritize what are called latency-sensitive applications. So even big file transfers, most companies will not ever pay to prioritize those because the pipes now are big enough to handle that. So I think in some ways that issue really is receded where it was a couple of years ago.
Just it might help to. Oh.
Go ahead, and then I'll call on you.
Okay.